bread makes you sick, that doesn't automatically mean you're allergic. People say they're allergic to gluten all the time, but apparently most of us are just wrong. So today we're breaking down gluten sensitivity, real gluten allergies, and what the heck celiac disease actually is. And I'm asking all of this to an actual expert, an allergist, an immunologist, and also my dad, Dr. Z. Welcome to My Allergist Dad.
Throat tickle or itchy eye, skin rash or a patch of hives. If allergies got you down bad, then just ask my allergist, My Allergist Dad.
Welcome to My Allergist Dad. I'm Drew. I'm a comedian in Los Angeles, and I'm talking with my dad, board certified, highly decorated, perennial top doc in Rhode Island for allergy, Dr. John Zwetschgenbaum. Hey, Dad.
Hey, Drew. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited. We've released the podcast. I'm waiting for all the awards nominations to come out. And, I know that there's a big appetite for this content, at the very least, among my social circles.
Well, on my end, my patients are really excited about it. I told them everybody's excited to know when it's available. And I say we're launching the beginning of December. And they've been great with questions and they're excited. And I'm excited to do this as well.
Well, the excitement is definitely coming through in the questions. We have a huge bank of questions, really intelligent, nuanced, insightful questions for stuff to you to talk about, stuff for you to talk about, me to ask about, me to help break down. So you have a really good group of patients.
Well, I think allergies are the most misunderstood. Part of it is that they don't train doctors about it. So they gloss over it with patients and just tell them to take an antihistamine. And there's so much on the internet. Some make sense, some doesn't make sense. And people have a lot of questions. And our goal is to try to guide them through this so they can better take care of themselves.
We appreciate you sharing all of your insights. But yeah, no, I'm excited. I'm actually in Asthma and Allergy Physicians of Rhode Island right now in the research wing of the practice.
Yes, you're in our conference room. You don't want to be in the same room with me because I have enough problems with the technology to make it worse.
It's not that I don't want to be in the room with you. It just makes it easier to record. But I've been in that room plenty, helping troubleshoot as best I can for us to do this amazing episode today. And it is an amazing episode because we're going to be talking about something that's very relatable for a lot of people, myself included. We're going to be asking, what's the difference between gluten allergy and gluten sensitivity? And beyond that, how can people react to certain foods sometimes, but not others? We're really going to get into some stuff that I think a lot of people are going to relate to and find interesting.
And it is interesting, Drew.
That's our tagline. It's interesting.
It is. It's funny. I should take my poster. I go through this poster with my patients all the time. And I try to explain to them that allergy is a specific word that has to do with allergy antibodies. So when you had your first peanut butter reaction, that was because you had IgE. That's the antibody, specific allergens for peanut butter.
Not the shopping center.
No, for peanut butter. And so we tested you and your skin test was positive and later your blood test was positive. So you have an allergy. And that's a very important concept that needs to be understood by patients because they'll go to most allergists and they say, this food bothers me. I want you to test me for it. And they test them. And the majority of the times they say to them, you are not allergic. And they leave frustrated because the food bothers them. And it's not because the food is contaminated. It's that the food is definitely triggering their immune system, but it's not triggering them through the allergy antibody sensitivity. So when it goes through another part of the immune system, it's immune mediated, but it's not an allergy because it's negative on allergy testing. And that's very important.
When you say that, is that because of a certain threshold of sensitivity, or just where in your body it's reacting to something?
It's how in your body it's reacting. And how your body is reacting plays a role with how it reacts and the seriousness. Not that any food reaction isn't serious, but people worry about an allergic reaction that could go to full-blown life-threatening anaphylaxis when you have the allergy antibodies. If you don't have the allergy antibodies, you may have a reaction, but it's typically not going to lead to life-threatening anaphylaxis.
We started with gluten, and I feel like this touches on a lot of different foods like lactose. A lot of people are lactose intolerant. Is that an allergy, or is that a reaction in a different way?
That is your body reacting in a different way, and that is not even a sensitivity. And I explain this a lot to my patients as well. So that's why that's a great question, Drew, because it's something people get confused on. And what's even more interesting about it, or confusing to patients, is we'll tell them they're sensitive to milk, or even they show allergy antibodies to milk. But they'll say, well, I'm avoiding milk, but they're having Lactaid milk. And that means they're still exposing themselves to the milk protein.
Lactaid milk has the lactose protein in it?
No. So the way it works is lactose intolerance means just what it says, that you're intolerant to the lactose sugar that's in the milk. In milk, it's in milk products, it's in ice cream.
It's the sugar, it's not the protein?
It's the sugar. And most people have some, but some don't have enough.
And is an intolerance always, long, frequent, urgent bathroom breaks?
Yes. So in lactose intolerance, you don't have enough of an enzyme called lactase. And lactase is the enzyme that breaks down the lactose sugar so that it is then able to be absorbed through the gut lining. If you don't have enough of the enzyme lactase, the sugar stays in the gut, and it, through something called osmosis, attracts water into the gut, which causes the bloating and the immediate diarrhea.
And the dysentery?
Yes. What'd you
It's
say,
like
dysentery?
Dysentery. It's like the Oregon Trail if you're eating...
Dysentery is more of a infection, but yes.
Oh, so dysentery is an infection that causes diarrhea, whereas lactose intolerance just gives you diarrhea.
Yes. So
I played a lot of Oregon Trail growing up, and they didn't have lactose intolerance as an option, as an obstacle.
Well, I think that you look up dysentery, but I think you're now confusing me. I think
I'll do a Google image search.
Yes. So the point is, if you're lactose intolerant and you have Lactaid milk, which basically has the enzyme that breaks down the sugar so that you don't have to worry about it being absorbed, you're still exposed to the milk protein, which is the allergenic or sensitive product.
So if you're lactose intolerant, you can have Lactaid and you won't have to go to the bathroom.
Correct.
But if you're lactose intolerant, but you have a dairy allergy, Lactaid is going to give you a reaction.
Correct.
And if you have a sensitivity, will Lactaid give you a reaction?
Yes, because the milk protein's still there.
So sensitivity and allergy are both reactions to a protein.
The milk protein.
It's just one is allergy is your antibodies reaction to that protein.
Your IgE antibodies react to the protein.
IgE antibodies reaction to the protein. Which protein is reacting in a sensitivity?
It still can be a milk protein.
Or sorry, which it's a different antibody reacting in a sensitivity?
With sensitivity, it's different types. It could be a different part of your immune system. It's called immune complex.
So sensitivity is sort of a broad term for a reaction to the protein as long as it's not the IgE antibody reacting.
That's great. You said it perfectly. It's other parts of the immune system. And that's a great segue into your next question. But one last thing. Some patients who have lactose intolerant, most of the time they can have yogurt because the fermentation breaks down the lactose or whatever it is, how they make yogurt. And similarly, certain cheeses,
Well, yeah, like feta, right? Or Parmesan.
whichever one you know better than me.
I'm not lactose intolerant, I don't
That's
think.
very good. I'm glad you don't have that problem. So that's a good segue into gluten sensitivity, gluten allergy, and gluten intolerance. Many people feel better when they don't have gluten, myself and you included.
So I wasn't feeling great when I was eating gluten, and I took that blood test,
The FIT test, the food inflammation test.
the food inflammation test. So is food inflammation, is that the typical food sensitivity reaction? Are there different food sensitivity reactions beyond just inflammation of the gut?
Well, food inflammation test is just looking for inflammatory markers. And since there are no standardized food sensitivity tests, I like that one because that one's I find reproducible with my patients. But they use the word food inflammation because they're looking at inflammatory markers because there aren't specific tests or immune things that everybody uses who advertises they do food sensitivity.
Is that because sensitivity is sort of a catch-all antibody term that it's hard, there's too many things to test for that you just can only look at inflammation?
Yes, and it's not standardized. Not everybody's using the same products and the same methods to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's usually not covered by insurance. But I always tell patients the test never makes the diagnosis. It's just a guide for which ones to focus for an elimination diet.
When I did the tests, my results were gluten was the highest, followed by in some order, coffee, sweet potato, and salmon. So I remember I did a month not having any of those, and I really missed coffee. I guess I'd become caffeine addicted, so I was drinking a lot of strong teas. And ultimately, when we looked at the test, the inflammation level was significant for gluten, and for the other ones, it was not so high that I needed to eliminate any of the other ones. So I reintroduced coffee, salmon, sweet potato, and every now and then I'll, accidentally have gluten, but for the most part, I've eliminated it and I do feel better.
And the reason that this is such a good comment from you is that you have.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You have non-celiac gluten sensitivity.
Is celiac then a threshold of sensitivity?
Celiac, you have specific antibodies. They're not IgE, so it's not a real allergy.
So celiac is not a gluten allergy.
It's not a gluten allergy, but it's a gluten immune response.
Yeah.
And celiac is when you have the gluten antibodies, but you also have on biopsy flattening of the villi of the gut, which then leads to malabsorption.
Are the villi, is that the gut lining?
Yes. So you don't have as much stuff to absorb it.
If you have celiac, that means you're not allergic to gluten, but you have an antibody response to gluten where your gut lining is not properly absorbing it's not properly absorbing or digesting gluten.
I think a better way to say it with celiac is that you definitely have, in a layperson's term, allergy, because this is something that's immune-mediated reaction in your gut, but it does not involve the IgE antibody. It involves IgG and IgA antibodies. It's immune-mediated. It causes significant inflammation and destruction, but it's not an allergy. It's not something you need an EpiPen that Benadryl is going to help, and epinephrine.
This kind of inflammation, what is that? Bloating, heartburn, digestive issues? Is that what happens with celiac?
No, celiac leads to malabsorption, which means it affects your health, not just how bloated you are. But some patients actually have a true gluten allergy and they're not celiac. They have IgE antibodies to gluten.
And that's more like your itchy throat, hives,
Yes,
anaphylaxis
exactly.
reaction.
Or acute diarrhea with it. It could be full anaphylaxis.
So diarrhea can either be a symptom of an allergy or an intolerance.
Or a sensitivity. It can be anything.
Sensitivity.
And that's why some patients who have gluten sensitivity or more intolerance, they go to Europe and they're very happy because they find that they can have the breads, the pasta over there. And that's because the way they do their wheat, they're not exposing the gluten as much. So they're not as exposed to the gluten protein, which is then causing less sensitivity.
The way that wheat is genetically modified in the US, it has, I've heard, 40% more gluten in it. So if you are gluten sensitive, you're getting 40% more gluten that the proteins that your body is responding to. So if you're sensitive and then you go to Europe, you're eating wheat and wheat products that have that much less gluten. So you're probably responding that degree less and you feel that much better when you eat it.
Right. And it's not sensitizing you as much over there because you're not having that quantity for the threshold.
Yeah.
You know, threshold is key because when I was doing my training, and it was when, this is way back when HIV and AIDS were first coming out, that's when they started telling us to wear gloves.
For what?
When you drew blood and when you touch patients.
You weren't wearing gloves before that?
No, you would just put them on a few times, but all that stuff for OSHA wasn't emphasized.
Gross.
And so then they started saying you have to wear gloves. Well, obviously, certain times we knew to wear gloves when the patients were bleeding and when the patients had AIDS, we did wear the
But
gloves.
you were washing your hands, right? It
Yes,
wasn't like
but
that
we
showed
didn't.
the mick or the nick.
No, we wore gloves, but it wasn't as prominent. But the point I'm saying is that there were powdered latex gloves. And every time you took a pair of gloves off, the powder went in the air and everybody breathed it. And so a lot of the surgeons and nurses in the OR became sensitized to latex and allergic to latex. And they did a study looking at French dental students. And what they found was the dental students that did not wear powdered latex gloves, but wore latex gloves, they did not develop the latex allergy, while the dental students that wore hands in the mouth, that wore the powdered gloves. And I remember way back then I had a nurse, and every time she took the gloves off, the powdered gloves, she'd start wheezing and coughing. And the way we tested for latex back then is literally cut off a pair of gloves, left it in sterile water, and then did a skin test. So I did the skin test and she was huge. But she was able to initially tolerate powder-free gloves. So the point is once they identified there was a threshold level for sensitivity similar to the gluten, latex allergy dropped dramatically. And now people don't even, the majority of gloves in the hospital are nitrile. Basically, what I was saying is that they recognized from that study when they went from powdered gloves to powdered-free gloves, because they would take off the gloves and then it would spray the allergen in the air. Just by not having powdered gloves, kept the latex airborne levels lower, and that lower level kept people from being sensitized. It was only when there were so many latex gloves being used and releasing the powdered allergen in the air that people became sensitized.
Was it the amount of latex that was leading to allergic responses and there was that much more latex in the powdered ones? Or was it that by virtue of having the powdered ones, there were different ways that our bodies were absorbing the latex and then developing a sensitivity?
It's the former.
It's the threshold of latex sensitivity that people have was being crossed by the powdered ones.
By keeping the levels lower, people were not developing the sensitivity.
Okay, so it was that people were developing a sensitivity because they were being exposed to so much latex.
Right. And that's what made me think of that with the gluten. Because in America, with the genetic modification, as you say, a 40% higher exposure to the gluten, we're reacting more and so many more people are reacting. Where in Europe, the sensitized people are being exposed to so much less that some of them are able to tolerate the gluten in Europe. Not a celiac patient with the antibodies, but a non-celiac gluten sensitized person. And also, less people have the sensitivity because they're not gaining the threshold level to trigger them to become sensitized.
How would you characterize the difference between a celiac gluten sensitivity and an other gluten sensitivity? Because celiac is a specific kind of gluten sensitivity, right?
Well, a lot of people feel gluten sensitivity, even when you have the antibodies related to celiac, is underdiagnosed. And I agree, because the purists are waiting to see celiac on an endoscopy.
And an endoscopy, that's a stomach inspection or a stomach
Yes.
exam?
So someone's having GI symptoms, especially in the upper GI area, they do the
So someone's having
endoscopy,
stomach issues.
right? And they do a biopsy, where not everybody's getting biopsied.
A
And so,
babopsy, as they say in my big fat
yes,
Greek wedding.
yes. I even wrote an article about it 30 years ago or more, 35 years ago. And I said that,
For what, Us Weekly? What,
no, for the Annals of Allergy, Asthma, and Immunology.
17?
17 is what my sister used to read when she was a kid.
Do they have any allergy articles?
No.
Oh.
So this was the allergy journal I was asked to write an article about when I was doing my training. And at that time, I said that celiac was not as common and that you needed the biopsy for the full diagnosis. Since then, we recognize that gluten sensitivity is underdiagnosed. It can present in different ways. Some patients, it's determined through they're anemic, they don't have enough blood cells because they're not absorbing the iron. And other patients have these blistering rashes. I had a patient with that. She had this weird rash, and I said it looked like dermatitis herpetiformis. So it looks like a herpes type rash, but it's a gluten sensitivity rash. And she didn't have celiac, she didn't have GI symptoms, but she had the rash. And as soon as she went off gluten, her skin cleared.
So is gluten and gluten products, is that a big source of iron for people?
No.
So then why are people anemic if they're gluten sensitive?
Because the gluten is affecting their ability to absorb.
Your body's just absorbing anything wrong now.
They're not absorbing nutrients.
Because it's absorbing too much gluten and it's blocking nutrients from being absorbed?
It's that your gut lining isn't working well because of the immune response to the gluten.
Okay.
As part of celiac. And once you stop eating the gluten, the area starts to heal because it's not having the immune-mediated response.
So basically, celiac does not mean gluten sensitivity. It's a type of gluten sensitivity. That said, celiac is still probably underdiagnosed in people who have gluten sensitivities.
Not correct.
Okay.
Basically, celiac is immune-mediated, so it is a gluten sensitivity, but not all gluten sensitivity is the same immune response or sensitivity as celiac.
Celiac is a specific immune-mediated gluten sensitivity that is not an allergy.
Correct, because it's not IgE mediated.
Yeah.
It's not through that allergy antibody pathway.
The second part of the question is, and maybe some of the threshold stuff where we're talking about could relate to this. The question was, how come I react to certain foods sometimes, but not others?
So again, what I tell patients all the time is sometimes your food-mediated symptoms are as an allergy. Some foods are high in histamine, so it causes an allergic-like response. And some foods might be a sensitivity. You're not always going to respond because the instances are different. Some foods trigger immune response in a non-allergic manner. So if you have several of those foods combined, you might hit your threshold to react. If you have one or two, that might be fine for you. Also, is your gut empty? Are you on an empty stomach, or did you eat foods? Did you have alcohol? A lot of things are related that affect your threshold. Did you exercise? Some people have true allergies, but the exercise brings it on. So you're not always going to react. Even with a true allergy, when you have allergy antibodies, you're not always going to react.
So it sounds like all of those sound like examples of threshold, but it's just there are different factors that affect where the threshold is. If you have a full stomach, you probably have a higher threshold for allergy. If you are drinking alcohol, you probably have maybe a lower threshold for an allergy. If you're exercising, maybe you have a lower threshold for exposure. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
So some of it might be the density of a food, how much of it you're eating, and then other factors like what's in your stomach, what are you drinking,
And people
are you
with
doing
true
aerobics?
allergies, like true IgE antibodies, it may take hardly any. Some patients just smelling it, the molecules get in them. Not everybody has the same sensitivity, even if they have the allergy antibodies.
But that sensitivity still operates on a threshold, and it's just some people, their threshold is airborne particles smelling it, and some people need to have a whole tablespoon of straight peanut butter to react to something.
Right. And that includes an allergy.
Threshold is going to affect whether you react or not, and that's for sensitivity or allergy, and maybe intolerance.
Sensitivity, the more you stay away, your threshold may improve. Allergy, you have to avoid it. But when we desensitize patients, we're in essence improving their tolerance or their threshold.
You're saying if you stay away from something, then later when you have it, you might actually be better about whether or not you have a sensitive response?
Yes, with a sensitivity, not an allergy.
Didn't we talk about before how with a lot of allergies, like for example, with a dog, you might not be allergic to a dog when you live at home with one, but then if you're away for a few months, you come back and you now are sensitive and have allergic responses?
That's true.
But with sensitivities, being away, but I guess it's food, so it's different.
It's food sensitivity, and that's not allergy. So with food sensitivity, a lot of times when you avoid the food, often you tolerate it later on. So again, you need to treat allergy and sensitivity different. Allergy antibodies, you need to avoid it completely. If you're desensitizing the patients, you can improve their tolerance. And if you desensitize them to the point where they can eat it, they need to eat it every day to maintain the desensitization. When it comes to food sensitivity, like gluten sensitivity, milk sensitivity, that's not an allergy, in other words, the allergy antibodies test is negative, then a lot of times with those patients, if they avoid it for 3 months or so, they can slowly reintroduce the food into their diet.
Let's see if I'm understanding this. Basically, with allergy, you need to avoid it so you don't get a reaction. That said, you can be on an allergy desensitization program where you're having controlled dosages of the allergen to ultimately desensitize you. Sensitivity, different antibody response to the food's protein. You avoid it, and ultimately, after avoiding it long enough, you actually may have a better threshold or no sensitivity to that food protein when you consume it later.
Well put, Drew.
What about intolerance? How can you desensitize an intolerance?
Like a lactose intolerance?
Yeah, or is that just going to be an enzyme thing and that's a whole other treatment?
No, I actually think you can improve with that. I think most people who have lactose intolerance aren't completely lactose intolerant. I think they can tolerate some, hence why they can have yogurt and cheese. But when they overload, I always tell patients when I was in medical school, I was working in a doctor's office and they had a Friendly's nearby. And especially since I was on a budget and not functional medicine understanding of nutrition back then, I would get a grilled cheese sandwich and I was fine. But sometimes I wanted a fribble, which was the Friendly's equivalent of an awful, if anybody remembers what an awful is.
So that's really only Rhode Islanders who are going to know what an awful
Yes.
is.
So
I would
they'll
say
know what
a
a
fribble is the Friendly's equivalent of a Blizzard from Dairy Queen or a McFlurry from McDonald's.
Whatever it is, it had ice milk and it was terrific. Anyway, sometimes I had that for lunch, just that. But when I was adventurous and had a grilled cheese sandwich with a Friendly fribble, or the one time I did and learned that it wasn't smart, I overdid and I didn't have enough lactase enzyme. Let's put it that way.
You met your threshold.
I met my threshold and I realized that never again. So most people have some lactase enzyme. And I think that as you, quote, heal the gut, as your gut heals, you remove your food sensitivity, you have a healthier gut lining through pre and probiotics, that often your lactase or lactose breaking up ability may improve.
Like Lactaid pills, that's the enzyme that people are eating so then they can break down lactose?
Yes.
And Lactaid milk, that's
Milk treated with lactase enzymes, basically.
okay. I'm learning a lot.
I'm glad you're still learning.
We're always learning. And I'm always learning from you.
And I'm learning from you, Drew. Even this little tech stuff with this MacBook Pro you're having me use.
Thank you for being open to Mac technologies.
Oh, I love it. It's just, unfortunately, our electronic medical records don't love it. So,
Oh, okay. But Dad, thank you so much. Looking forward to driving back to the house in separate cars after this.
I can't wait to see you soon.
I'm excited to hang out. I'm in town for Thanksgiving.
Oh, we're going to have some good allergy Thanksgiving questions.
We're going to have some good allergy lived experiences at our 2 Thanksgiving dinners. We're really going to put to the test what thresholds we can eat at the cheese plate, at the desserts, at the turkey dinner.
We're going to sort of stay clear of those lactose intolerant people.
Yeah. Or make sure they stay clear of the lactose.
I just had a thought. We should really have Lactaid pills left out like mints or pre-meal.
It's a good idea.
That's just a thought.
I mean, do you have mints at the office? Maybe you could just I know it's not an allergy, but you could leave out Lactaid pills.
I'm not giving out cheese in the office.
Okay. I'm just saying giving out the pills.
milk,
Yeah, okay. Yeah, maybe we'll go to Dairy Queen and we'll ask them to have a Lactaid dispenser.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. More clients for them.
Genius. All right. Thanks, everybody. This was My Allergist Dad. Leave us a review on iTunes or Spotify. They really help the show grow. If you throw a question in there, you get to jump the line for getting on the show. We will see you next week.
Definitely. I'm looking forward to it.
If allergies got you down bad, then just ask my allergist, my allergist dad.
The My Allergist Dad podcast is for general informational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice, and no doctor-patient relationship is formed. The use of information on this podcast or materials linked from this podcast is at the user's own risk. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice for any medical condition they may have and should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions.